Yo, what it do, family? This is Ayyoojwatchthis. We are back here with the I don't know what it is called, but the evolution of video game graphics from 1947 to 2023. So these are just like graphics of video games, how it looked back in the day. I would like to see how it was back then. I didn't know they were playing games all the way back then like that. God damn, but shit, we gonna see some of the see how some of it look. So sorry for the yawning. Let's get to the video.
Whether you're flying across the world in Microsoft Flight Simulator, swinging across Manhattan rooftops in Marvel's Spider-Man, or exploring the open world of Red Dead Redemption 2, one thing these games have in common is their stunning graphics. It's hard to believe how much video game graphics have evolved throughout the years, especially when we consider that the extremely limited visuals were from just 50 years ago. So how did we get to the ultra-realistic graphics and expansive worlds we see in games today? This is the evolution of video game graphics. Let's go back to the early 1950s when the first video games appeared. The earliest known interactive game was the cathode ray amusement device in 1947. Yeah, this doesn't really look like a game, but rather a boring program you had to use in high school. In 1950, the first true game was released, a tic-tac-toe game called Birdie the Brain. The following year, the first gaming computer was made, the Nimrod. The main focus wasn't the entertainment, but rather to prove computers could carry out very complex practical problems. It wasn't until 1958 that the first game, simply for entertainment purposes, was built. The game was Tennis for Two, and it became an instant sensation with hundreds of visitors waiting in line to play the game
imagine
during
playing
its
something
debut.
on that with the dot
tennis
eater?
game was one of the earliest games to feature moving graphics. Another worthy mention during the early days of video game development is the 1962 video game Space War. This game was developed by Steve Russell and some other people at MIT on a PDP-1 mini-computer. In the game, two players fight each other to try to destroy each other's spaceship. Not only was it very popular, but it was also considered one of the most important games in early video game history. It inspired many other games, such as Computer Space and Space Invaders.
That's my game right there, Space
Fun
Invaders.
fact, did you know that the original Space War is still playable at the Computer History Museum? Not only is it the original game, it is also still playable on the PDP-1 computer.
Wow.
Up until the 1970s, computers were still very expensive and only a few people could afford them. For instance, the PDP-1 cost about $120,000 or over $1 million today when adjusted for inflation. Because of this, only a lucky few were able to play games. However, the video game industry transitioned into a new era with the introduction of the first commercial arcade video game, Computer Space, in 1971. The developers, Nolan Bushnell and Ted Dabney, created large cabinets on which people could play the game. The two developers founded Atari and launched the famous Pong video game in 1972. Pong became the first commercially successful video game, and it helped to establish the video game industry. At the same time, the first home console was developed, the Magnavox Odyssey. During this era, many other consoles were created, including the Atari 2600, which we extensively feature in the evolution of Atari. Many new and simple games were developed for this console, including Combat. But then, the golden age of arcade games began with the release of Space Invaders in 1978. Video game graphics significantly improved from the basic
I grew up on
lines,
Space
dots,
Invaders,
and
low-key.
blocks commonly found in most games before that period. Fun fact, Space Invaders was a huge commercial success. The game had a net profit of $450 million, which is equivalent to over $1.3 billion today, making it one of the most successful games of all time. Almost at the same time, RGB color graphics were becoming more popular, allowing for animated multicolor sprites.
It's weird because I play. It's a game on my phone. I kind of play like it's like Space Invaders. I grew up off of Space Invaders, like playing that on the computer. Like that's when my first like console was at the computer. Like I used to play that faithfully on the computer. That and Spades, that Spades, that pinball machine, that pinball machine, and Pong, you know, back and forth Pong and shit. I used to be playing that shit faithfully on the computer all the time. Like every time I used to go to my mom's job and stuff, I used to just play that bitch on the computer, bro. Anytime I was around the computer, I'm playing that bitch. Like I grew up off this.
In 1979, Galaxian was released.
Not to say I was born in 1979, but or 1970 or some shit.
Unlike
I wasn't.
Most video games before that time with static backgrounds, Galaxian also had a scrolling effect. Another significant development in video game graphics
I remember that
during
game
this period
too.
Was the introduction of vector graphics.
I remember that.
Popular games used these vector graphics, including Asteroids, a space-themed shooter released in 1979. And Star Wars, released a few years later and was praised for being one of the greatest video games at the time. At the end of the golden age of arcade games, colored graphics have become the norm in almost every video game. Games like the popular 1980 Pac-Man would not have been the same without these important, colorful graphics. Fun fact, Japanese video game designer Taru Iwatani wanted to invent a game that would revolutionize the video game market. While out with friends, he ordered a pizza. Due to the lack of appetite, he only cut off a slice. Suddenly, the designer thought of the pizza as a game character. In his imagination, it looked like a creature that needed to eat. And that is how Pac-Man was born. The golden age of arcade games came quickly to an end with the video game crash of 1983. Revenues of the video game industry peaked at around $3.2 billion, then fell massively to around $100 million by 1985, which is a drop of almost 97%. The crash was attributed to several factors. One of the most important ones was the poor quality of game titles that were released. However, one of the games that was still very successful despite the crash was Nintendo's Donkey Kong. The game was praised for its graphics, animations, and characters, which gave the game somewhat of a story. The Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES, was
That's my first. That was that. This right here. Then this right here. This right here was my first like console video game. I remember when my mom bought me this. Like I remember it used to have Duck Hunt on there too, with the gun and stuff. You could be boo boo. Like I remember that shit, man. This was packed full of games, bro. Like this, I grew up off this. This was my game system. Like my first game console before anything. Like I only game console I wish I would have always got was a Dreamcast. I never got a Dreamcast, and I always wanted a Dreamcast. But I was able to see a Dreamcast and see how it plays. I was sick one day. One of my friends, his name Avery, he had a Dreamcast, and my friend Michael at that time took that bitch. Was like, hey man, I'll take that bitch off your hand, and I was sick. I was like, damn. But nah, man, this was my first game system I grew up off of. Like, I played it so many games to this shit. I used to come home every goddamn day as a kid, faithfully, and just be downstairs just playing this shit all the time.
Incredibly important in reviving the video game industry. Game graphics quickly became more appealing during the mid and late 1980s as sprite technology continued to improve. This can be seen in games that were released during this period.
This is just like a childhood memory.
Super Mario Brothers, The Legend of Zelda, Final Fantasy, and Street Fighter.
Street Fighter.
At the end of the 1980s, 2D graphics had improved significantly, and game developers started experimenting with 3D graphics. CD-ROM was also introduced as storage, allowing developers to store more data. Although the early attempts of creating 3D graphics resulted in an imitation known as pseudo-3D or 2.5D graphics, most of the games released during this period were more colorful and had satisfying gameplay. One of these games was Street Fighter II, released in 1991. One of the methods used by developers to achieve pseudo 3D graphics is known as parallax scrolling. This technique is used to create a sense of depth by making the different layers of the background move independently of each other at different speeds. Images far away in the background move much slower than images in the foreground. I often use this technique in my animations to give them a more 3D feel. Examples of popular games with 2.5D graphics include The Sims, Diablo, and of course, Sonic the Hedgehog.
I grew
Fun
up on
fact,
Sonic.
Sonic could have had a very different name. Originally, the suggested name was Mr. Needlemouse. Starting from the
I'm glad it didn't go with
mid-1990s,
that
most
shit.
video games transitioned fully into using 3D graphics. In 1992, Virtua Racing was released, and it is considered one of the first video games to use 3D graphics. Another worthy mention during these early days of 3D graphics is the 1993 Doom. This game instantly popularized the first-person shooter genre. It was
remember
also
playing
one of the
Doom
first
somewhere.
to feature multiplayer capabilities.
At Metro, get a new iPhone 12 with 5G. Take amazing pictures and share instantly. You don't take yada yada in life? Don't take yada yada from your wireless provider. Get a
The 3D revolution was fueled by intense competition among video game companies to create more powerful consoles. With the introduction of the PlayStation in 1994, countless 3D games were introduced.
That was my game too. Yeah, I'm an Xbox fan now. I'm an Xbox, head now. I know y'all probably say, Xbox head? But yeah, I'm an Xbox. But I grew up off the Nintendo, and then I grew up right off the PlayStation. I had PlayStation way before I had Xbox. That's crazy though. Like I was a PlayStation fan. Like I had the PSP, man, the PlayStation at home, bro. Like I was a PlayStation head, but said fuck it with the Xbox.
Produced, including Gran Turismo, which was incredibly difficult to develop. Game designer Kazunori Yamauchi said, quote, "It took 5 years. In those 5 years, we could not see the end. I would wake up at work, go to sleep at work. It was getting cold, so I knew it must be winter. I estimate I was home only 4 days a year."
Damn.
All the hard work resulted in groundbreaking graphics and one of the greatest racing games ever released. In 2001, Grand Theft Auto 3 was released. With its impressive 3D
My game.
graphics, it set a new benchmark for open-world games.
It's my
Another
game.
significant game was Half-Life 2. It had very advanced physics, animation, sound, AI, and graphics for its time. During the early 21st century, we continued to see an unprecedented surge in technology, which led to games with expansive worlds and graphics more realistic than ever before. Gears of War was released during this period. IGN called it the most gorgeous-looking game on the Xbox 360. In
And it really
2007,
was.
Halo 3 was released, utilizing a proprietary in-house
Halo.
graphics engine, allowing for graphic technologies such as high dynamic range, global lighting, and motion blurring. In 2011, Skyrim had significant visuals for its time due to the Creation Engine, which allowed for a draw distance that renders further than any previous Elder Scrolls game. Dynamic lighting allowed shadows to be created by any object in the large, open-world fantasy game. Crysis 3 was launched in 2013, and one of the major goals while developing the game was to push graphics. The CEO of Crytek said,
That
quote,
shit look like Disney.
"Graphics, whether it's lighting or shadows, puts you in a different emotional context and drives the immersion." While PCs are generally known for having the highest graphics, the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, released in 2013, were a major step forward for game graphics on consoles, allowing for a new generation of games with much better graphics. One of the games for these consoles was The Witcher 3, released in 2015. It is considered one of the greatest games of all time due to its huge open world, plot, and graphics. Another game with impressive graphics that was released in the same year for both consoles was Star Wars Battlefront. Another worthy mention is Horizon Zero Dawn, which was released in 2017. It has a gorgeous and colorful open world filled with robotic creatures. The machines and world were inspired by BBC documentaries, which allowed for these amazing visuals. The game won multiple awards, including Best Graphics by IGN's Best of 2017 awards. Fun fact, before creating Horizon Zero Dawn, Guerrilla Games had only created the Killzone franchise.
Damn.
The studio wanted to create an entirely different game. So instead of a linear first-person shooter in a dark dystopian world, they created an action role-playing game with a colorful and beautiful open world. In 2018, multiple games were released that set a new benchmark for video game graphics. First, there was God of War. The franchise stepped it up by developing a gorgeous action-adventure game. Only a few...
Man, y'all just don't know, man. God of War was my favorite game to play on the PlayStation. Oh, so God of War is the only reason why I would ever try to go back to PlayStation. Like, God of War would be the only reason why I would ever want to go back to PlayStation.
Months later, Marvel's
and
Spider-Man was
low-key
launched,
Spider-Man too.
allowing Spider-Man to swing through beautiful New York City. And there was, of course, Red Dead Redemption 2, which not only has phenomenal visuals, but also has many mind-blowing little details, such as Arthur's facial hair, which grows in real time. Game engines are incredibly important for the evolution of video game graphics. In 2020, Epic Games revealed Unreal Engine 5, which supports the next-generation PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S. One of the major features of Unreal Engine 5 is Nanite, an engine that allows for high-detailed photographic source materials to be imported into games. To significantly improve the lighting, Lumen was created. It has dynamic lighting, and it allows light to bounce off other objects to create more realistic and beautiful scenes. Unreal Engine 5 allows for an unprecedented level of detail with an impressive draw distance.
Don't fail me now.
Shit looks dope. That shit look dope like fuck.
In 2020, Microsoft Flight Simulator was released. Let's just take a moment to appreciate how magnificent the game looks.
That shit look dope.
This game is massive. In fact, it simulates the entire Earth using textures and data from Bing Maps. Microsoft partnered with Blackshark.ai, who used the groundbreaking technology of Microsoft Azure and artificial intelligence to analyze map data and generate photorealistic 3D models of objects. The game also has realistic physics and real-world weather data. This really is the future of gaming. In 2020, Cyberpunk 2077 was released, and it was one of the most anticipated games of all time. While the open world of Night City looks gorgeous, the game had a disastrous launch as a result of the bugs and performance issues. It even led to Sony removing the game from the PlayStation Store.
Damn.
Nonetheless,
yeah, I remember
the game was
people saying that
praised
shit
for
had
its
a lot of
visual
bugs.
quality, story, atmosphere of the world, and cyberpunk setting. Fun fact, players and fans create mods to modify games. These mods can make games incredibly realistic. Let's look at some of the amazing examples of modded games, such as Cyberpunk, Skyrim, Grand Theft Auto 5, The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild, and Red Dead Redemption 2. In 2021, Forza Horizon 5 was launched. For anyone who loves racing games, this truly is a dream come true. The scale of the game is significantly larger than its predecessors. Developers used photogrammetry data to make the environment look as close as possible to real-life Mexico. In late 2021, Unreal Engine 5 released a demo for the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S. The Matrix Awakens, an Unreal Engine 5 experience, is a boundary-pushing technical demo. It has a dense, open-world city environment made out of billions of polygons, resulting in some of the most impressive graphics I've ever seen. Although the demo isn't a game, it offers a vision for what the future of interactive content could be, with incredibly rich and complex environments and photoreal cinematic spectacles.
Wait, they made a Matrix game? Oh, that's dope. I gotta find that. I didn't even know they made a game out of the Matrix.
And finally, a game that has yet to be released while making this video is the sequel to Horizon Zero Dawn, called Horizon Forbidden West. This game will be larger than its predecessor and will feature underwater exploration. It takes advantage of the PlayStation 5's increased processing power, custom SSD, 3D spatial audio, enhanced lighting, reduced loading times, and improved visual effects. These next-generation graphics look absolutely phenomenal. It is truly unbelievable how much video game graphics have improved over the years. The graphics we have today are exactly what my 12-year-old self dreamed gaming would be in the future. I've no doubt.
Especially for people that really grew up in like the 90s and really got to see the evolution of gaming, like how it became. Yeah, it's very amazing because I was born in the 90s, so it was like I was born, like I didn't even have like I said, my first video game was like playing probably on really was playing on computers, then eventually going to console. And then I remember for me, like the biggest one, like when I first really like it's not video game graphic, but this is when I knew like video games was like involving more. When they came out, if anybody had this bitch, you know you was raw. The Game Boy, man. If you ever had the Game Boy, y'all know y'all's original OGs. Y'all some OGs, because a lot of this generation today don't know shit about the Game Boy SP, the Game Boys, like the Game Boy Advance and the Game Boy SP. Man, I had the Game Boy Advance and I had the original one and I had the SP. Man, I had all Game Boys, man. Like, and playing games on the Game Boy, the people that play games on the Game Boy, y'all know how them graphics used to look. Them graphics used to look horrible sometimes. But to see how this shit is evolving to like the Game Boys as a PSP, to all this shit, and how the graphics is looking, especially people that grew up in the 90s and really had to play games like that, like games, shitty games back in the day, like bad graphic games. Yeah, you can really appreciate how graphics look nowadays, because whew, if some of y'all would have like seen how the games used to look, the graphics and the shit, how they looking in the 90s, like early 90s and late 90s, oh shit, y'all would be pissed. Y'all would be pissed. This
game
shit.
Graphics will continue to evolve, and I can't wait to see what the future of gaming will bring us.
But what form will it take? The journey ahead will reveal what you stand for.
We've made evolution videos about many games that were featured in this video, including Marvel's Spider-Man, Grand Theft Auto, Horizon Zero Dawn, Microsoft Flight Simulator, and more. If you want to see...
So we may watch some more of his video down the line, man, and see some more of his videos. But like, I ain't gonna lie, man, this was a good video. This was a really good video right here, man. Yeah, gameplay, graphics, all that shit have really evolved a lot on these games. And like I said, from us just growing up on computer games, shit, even now, like PC games are just as up there with like consoles. Like back then in the day, people had like they had a legit like argument that saying like PC games cannot touch the console games, but nowadays PC games graphics and all the other shit that can come with PC games can outblow consoles out the water, low key. Like there's shit that you like, you know, on consoles, like games like on PC games, if you play GTA, even like WWE wrestling, like on PC games, you can get certain shit that you could not get on a console unless you just like a wizard and like at that shit, know how to get that shit out there. But still, like there's so much I've seen, like even when GTA came out, people was doing so much shit on, you could do so much shit on GTA with a PC than a console. But this is to say that the graphics back then, like PC have really stepped up with they graphics too, though, just on the strength though. Like consoles have stepped up, but PC have really stepped up. So yeah, their graphics have really stepped up over the years though. But let me know what y'all think about some of the graphics. Let me know if like, was y'all like some of y'all like some 90 babies, and do y'all remember back in the day like the games, like consoles back in the day that, you know, niggas had to play back then? And let me know how y'all feel about the graphics now, especially the people that was born in the 90s. Like y'all know how that shit was. But let me know what y'all think, man. Always, again, like, comment, subscribe, and share this bad boy. And until another time, peace, y'all.